If you've seen the movie Dark Waters that's in the theaters now, you've heard the story of the discharge of certain types of pollutants like C8 and a broader class of pollutants that have sickened and killed many West Virginians. And sadly, many of those toxic pollutants remain unregulated across the country and in West Virginia. So we're here today to announce two things. One is a bill that is currently being drafted called the Clean Drinking Water Act that will help us reduce the discharges of those pollutants into drinking water sources in West Virginia and keep our tap water safe. And the second is a constitutional amendment to guarantee that West Virginians have pure water. The types of pollutants that we're talking about have many different names. You may have heard of C8 or PFAS, or PFOA, or some other acronyms. But what they share is that these are man-made chemicals, and they're persistent in the environment, which means they don't break down. They stay in the environment, and they stay in human bodies. And they're pervasive. They're found in our food. They're found in household products like Teflon, water-repellent fabrics. They're found in cleaning products, and they're even found in firefighting foam. These pollutants sometimes are found in our drinking water, and because they're persistent, they're building up in our bodies, not just humans, but also fish and animals. So before I introduce the other speakers, I'd like to give a few details about the legislative efforts that we're introducing. And the first is the bill, the Clean Drinking Water Act. And the goal of this bill is to reduce these harmful toxins in drinking water, to protect the health of West Virginians, and to strengthen the state's economy. And it will do this in a couple of ways. First, it takes a source water protection approach to identify where these pollutants are being used and discharged, and requiring those facilities that do use them and discharge them to disclose that to state regulatory agencies so that they can be properly regulated. The second thing that it does is it requires the State Department of Environmental Protection to require facilities that discharge these pollutants to monitor those discharges so that we could have more information and build a database so that we could have science-based information with which to set regulations and permits. And it would require the information to be reported back to the legislature so that we could make appropriate policies. So that focuses on source water protection. And the second aspect of the bill focuses on ensuring that the tap water is clean. And it requires the state to use science to develop safe drinking water thresholds, which are called maximum contaminant levels, or MCLs. And these are the goals that public drinking water systems must meet to ensure that tap water is safe.
I was also a child of the Mid-Ohio Valley. I grew up in Parkersburg, West Virginia, the scene, as we know, of a large-scale, long-term poisoning of our waters that had real effects on human beings and their bodies and lives. And West Virginia threw golden rings at this industry. C8 was, as we know, knowingly dumped into our waters, and they knew it would make us sick, but it was cheaper for them. I was a competitive swimmer for all of my developmental years, so not only was I consuming the waters, but I was spending my days in them. I was just trying to be a strong girl, making West Virginia proud. And in retrospect, it was a great violation. That's how I reflect upon it now. Today, my thyroid no longer functions normally, which is a known side effect of C8. And at age 25, I developed osteosarcoma of my hip, which required me to amputate my hip and leg in order to have a chance at life. we as West Virginians should not have to suffer these consequences of just living here. I often think about my grandfather, if he could see me now. I think that this was not the dream of prosperity that he envisioned for me. But I also think that he would be proud and thankful that I've taken something that was painful and made it become advocacy for other people. I live in Jefferson County now, and I desperately love Jefferson County, just as I love the rest of West Virginia. We depend so much upon the beauty and the health and the tourism there and the preservation of everything that it is. People come from all over the world, not to see just us in the Eastern Panhandle and our Shenandoah Valley, but all of West Virginia. And that's what we have. That's our resource and our people. I find myself now in the middle of other corporate wars, using myself as a visual aid to say people at some point have to come before industry. We complain about people not staying in West Virginia, but we can't expect them to stay here if this is the kind of thing that we're going to allow. I just walked across Denmark on one leg and two crutches, about 100 kilometers, 70 miles, in protest of an industry called Rockwool. It's a Danish insulation company that's trying to industrialize the Eastern Panhandle. Jefferson County has no heavy industry presently. Every independent scientist and specialist that we have brought to the Eastern Panhandle and asked them, is this a risk for us? They say your air and water is in peril. The industry's open that they will be polluting us. They will be polluting our water. They will be putting our air at risk. They will be polluting our air. And our local officials are stepping up and presenting a united front with our people. But the state has not supported us. In fact, they have worked actively against us and against the will of the people. And I found myself speaking to human rights institutes in another country across an ocean, asking for their protection. And there was a moment in there where I finally it hit me that I'm crossing oceans and sitting in other countries asking for protection that my state should be giving me, that my state should be providing me, that my state should be giving my child as an inheritance. And this came full circle for me. John and many of you have been working on everything that we can do from our side to be able to protect all of us. And I just want to thank you all of your support. I support the bill. I support the amendment. It's everything that we need to be not only healthy, but to be prosperous as a state. There is no future if there's no safety, if there's no promise for tomorrow, if people like me are walking around and it's still okay. This isn't where we should be in West Virginia, and I'm ready for a new day. And I just want to thank you all for this bill and for everything that you're doing. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. It's such a joy and an honor to be here today to support this important legislation and the advancement of an environmental rights amendment here in the state of West Virginia. My organization, Green Amendments for the Generations, is all about inspiring and supporting the passage of green amendments in every state across our nation and ultimately at the federal level. And that is our mission, because the fact of the matter is, here in the United States of America, people truly believe in their hearts that they have a right to clean water, to clean air, to live in communities free of toxins, to get the many benefits of having a healthy environment. But the truth is, in states across our nation, that is not your right. That is not your right. You have all kinds of rights here in the U.S. You have the rights to free speech and freedom of religion. You have private property rights and due process rights. But you do not have a right to pure water, clean air, and a healthy environment, except with very limited exception. There are those rights in 2 states here in the United States of America, as Delegate Hansen mentioned, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and that is partly and due to the work of my organization. And Tracy's story is a beautiful example, a sad example, a testing example, right, of why it is so important to have constitutional environmental rights. Because when we don't have those rights, lives are damaged, lives are devastated, and in some cases, lives can be lost. And that's why the proposal of an environmental rights amendment here in the state of West Virginia is so powerful, so important, because it will give environmental rights the protection and the recognition that they deserve. A green amendment, what's being proposed here in West Virginia is being called an environmental rights amendment here in the state of West Virginia, but I refer to it as a green amendment. What a green amendment is a provision that recognizes the rights to pure water, clean air, and healthy environment in the Bill of Rights section of our Constitution, and protects those rights for the benefit of all people, including future generations. And because of the way they're written, because of the way they're placed, because of the way they're implemented, it gives environmental rights the same status and the same legal protection as all of the other human, civil, political rights that we hold dear. Now, while right now it's only Pennsylvania and Montana that have green amendments, environmental rights amendments that are in place, that are in play, we actually have green amendment, environmental rights amendment proposals advancing in 3 other states, in the state of Maryland, the state of New Jersey, and the state of New York. And we are anticipating green amendment proposals in the very near future in the state of New Mexico and in the state of Arizona. And there's interest in a growing number of states across the nation. When it comes to perfluorinated chemicals, a green amendment, right, could have been powerful and important if we had had one here in West Virginia in years past. One of the many things that a green amendment does is it fills in the gaps where our state and federal laws are failing us. It provides us a legal opportunity to take on those environmental challenges that are being missed by legislation and regulations that are in place. Had there been an environmental rights amendment of the kind being proposed today here in the state of West Virginia all those years ago when DuPont started using these chemicals, perhaps we could have avoided altogether, using the environmental rights amendment, the release of the PFCs into the environment. If the Environmental Rights Amendment had not been successfully used to avoid the release of the PFCs, it could have been used to ensure that legislators and regulators acted more quickly, more firmly, more strongly to clean up the mess that was out there in the environment and protect the very real crisis that was falling upon people's lives, like Tracy and her family. So I am pleased and honored to be here today to support the advancement of a West Virginia Environmental Rights Amendment. It's the right thing to do. It's the right time to do it. And it is only through the passage of an Environmental Rights Amendment that we will give our right to pure water, clean air, and a healthy environment the same legal stature and standing as all those other human, civil, and political rights we hold dear. Basic rights like free speech and freedom of religion. Doesn't our right to clean water deserve the same constitutional recognition and protection? We all here believe that it does. Thank you.
The people of our state know that polluting industries drive away clean industries. That's why our economy's in the tank. We have relied for too long on industries that pollute too much. If we're ever going to get a decent economy here, we're going to start having tighter environmental regulations. That's all there is to it. Incidentally, a few days ago, I saw the movie Dark Waters. Not to give the plot away, it's about a very courageous Wood County farmer and an equally courageous lawyer who got $700 million out of one of the most powerful companies on the planet. That kind of courage has also been shown by my friend and constituent Tracy Danzy. One more point. There is not 1 second in that movie that demeans or besmirches West Virginia or West Virginians. I strongly recommend you see the movie. Thank you all for coming.
West Virginia has the 3rd highest cancer death rate in the country. And we were 5th, now we're 3rd, we're moving in the wrong direction. And this bill is one important step to take to turn that around. And we also need to make sure that the cost of pollution aren't externalized, aren't put on our backs, because that's what we've been seeing time and time again. So where do we start? We start with this bill, and thank you, Delegate Senator, for taking this step forward with the Clean Drinking Water Act, because what we're going to get out of this is, first of all, a chance at transparency, that companies will have to disclose and monitor and tell us what is in our water, find out who is discharging that, and what are the risks to our health. And then when we need to think of risk in a different way. Instead of trying to avoid risk or accept risk or try to treat the water to some extent that it gets to some safe level, we need to reduce risk. Risk reduction, not risk avoidance. We need to address pollution at its source so that we're not the ones who are paying for more water treatment. And it's important to set a safe drinking water standard here, but the fact is water companies shouldn't pay, and their customers shouldn't pay for the pollution that's happening upstream. And finally, this is about what we expect as citizens in this state from companies who need to act on behalf of public health, not just their bottom profit line, to put people over profits. We need to, and what we're seeing though is the opposite. Just a couple weeks ago, we heard a presentation from the West Virginia Manufacturers Association that they are proposing to weaken 63% of our standards dealing with these toxic chemicals. Again, going the wrong direction, increasing risk, increasing exposure instead of reducing. So it's time for our government, time for our elected officials like these champions you see here behind me to step up and say enough is enough. And that regulation isn't a bad word in this state, because what regulation is protection. It is protection. It is our chance to have healthy lives. So we shouldn't have to choose between taking a job and having cancer. We can do this correctly. And the points made about when we conserve our natural resources, we are attracting economic development. We are attracting people. We're not making them sick. We're not sending them away. So thank you again to this contingent of leaders here who are taking a bold step. And I hope others follow. I hope that everyone out there will contact their legislators at home to please support the Clean Drinking Water Act and the Environmental Rights Amendment. Thanks.
Now, in these hallways, we often hear a common refrain, a false narrative that states that a healthy economy and a safe environment are somehow mutually exclusive. Now, that's simply a lie. A strong, diverse economy relies on a healthy, safe environment. I know this firsthand as the delegate who represents the downtown Charleston area, which was ground zero for the 2014 Freedom Industry chemical spill. To this day, we still have businesses and restaurants that have yet to fully recover from that incident that was once again brought on by the irresponsible and dangerous business practices of our corporate neighbors. So we cannot have, I can't say this strongly enough, we cannot have a strong, diverse economy and a state that our young people want to stay in, a state that they want to stay and raise their own children in. We cannot have any of this until we act to protect the most basic necessity of life, clean, safe drinking water.